Hey guys, this is Nathan from Modern Rifleman, and today we're going to look at the new Lunar-45 suppressor from Gemtech. As always, this silencer was sent over by the folks at Silencer Shop for us to take a look at, so we greatly appreciate their help on that. So what makes the Lunar-45 so special? Well, first and foremost, it is Gemtech's first adjustable length pistol silencer. Other folks or other companies in the industry like Dead Air and Rugged and Griffin have all had adjustable length suppressors for a little bit now, but it's good to see someone like Gemtech hopping on that boat as well. In terms of construction, the Lunar-45 is almost entirely aluminum, so it's a little bit different than some of the other options in the market as far as that goes. The tube's aluminum, the front module's aluminum, the baffles are as well. But the only real exception to that would be the mounting system, or the booster assembly, Nielsen device, whatever you want to call it, which is steel on the back. And it's pretty hefty. We'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. But the nice thing about this booster, or the mounts for the Lunar-45, is that any of the previous Gemtech 45 mounts are compatible with the Lunar-45. So if you've got a black side 45, if you've got the GM 45, and you've got the, maybe you have the 3-lug mounts, or maybe you have the fixed barrel mounts, or you've just got a collection of pistons for different barrels, they'll all work inside of this new Lunar-45. So it's a smart move by Gemtech. They've been pretty good about that over the years, keeping things compatible, at least from a mounting standpoint. So that is a great feature there. In terms of size, the Lunar-45 is fairly large, even by 45 pistol or can standards. In this full-length configuration, it weighs in at 12.3 ounces. That's according to my postal scale, which puts it a little bit higher than what Gemtech listed at. I think part of that can be blamed on the fact that this has been used. So it's a little bit dirty on the inside, not unreasonably so. And then in terms of total length, you're looking at 8 5/8 inches in the full configuration. Shortening the suppressor is as simple as unscrewing the front module. I'm going to try and do this all while holding all these pieces together. And then unscrewing the front end cap, dropping it on the main body, and twisting it until it's snug. Boom. Set that down for a moment. And now you have the shortened Lunar. In this configuration, you're looking at 10.9 ounces and 7 1/8 inch in length. So around 1.5 inches shorter. And as a result, quite a bit handier. So let's head on over to the mat and take this thing apart. Alright guys, now that we've gone over the basics of the Lunar-45, we're going to take a look at the internals. But before I do that, I want to roll in some comparables for you, just so you can get a good feel for just how large the Lunar is. I know when it comes to a pistol suppressor especially, size does matter. And so we're going to go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple things that will give you a decent feel for just the overall size of the can. The first thing I'm going to put in here is my Glock 21 SF. This is the pistol that I would normally use this suppressor and other 45 caliber cans on. As you can see, the overall length of the Lunar-45 is right there at about the same length as the Glock slide plus the threaded barrel. The other comparable, and probably a more apt comparison, is my personally owned Silencer Co. Octane 45, and keep it from rolling away there. Now as you can see, the Octane 45 is just a hair shorter than the Lunar, but the overall size difference isn't that great. The other thing worth mentioning here is that because the Lunar here in the middle is mostly aluminum, has aluminum baffles and an aluminum tube, the center of gravity tends to be more towards the booster assembly, which is really the only steel portion of the can. On the Octane, the entire baffle stack is 17.4 stainless steel, and because of that, you find that the center of gravity tends to be more central in the tube here. So even though these two silencers weigh almost the same and are about the same length, most of the weight on the Lunar tends to be towards the back of the suppressor. So when you've got it mounted onto a pistol, that means that the center of gravity of the overall package is more rearward and therefore usually a little bit more comfortable. I'm going to pull these out of the way now that you've gotten the feel there. And we're going to start taking this Lunar apart. Now, for full disclosure, I have already disassembled the can. One thing I found when I started to take it apart, for one of the previous cuts of this video, is that the baffles were pretty well stuck in the tube. Now, they weren't as bad as some suppressors I've used, but they were stuck enough that it required a little extra force. A rubber mallet and a dowel was what I ended up using, and it turned out fine. But certainly worth noting that if you don't take this thing apart regularly, even though the baffles are shielded from the outside of the suppressor, they might get kind of stuck. Not terribly so, but they might get a little bit stuck. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do, and as I showed you at the beginning of this video, is we're going to unscrew the front module. The cool thing about the front module here is that it's entirely captive. The baffles won't fall out if you take it off. They can only go out the front of the module, and that's currently holding the end cap. So let's go ahead and unscrew the end cap and set it aside here for a moment. Alright. Now all I have to do is invert the module and push the baffles out from the back. Now, as you can see, they're not the most cooperative here, but with a little bit of wiggling I can get them out. Wiggle it out, and then boom. I'm going to put the module down here, and we're going to talk about the front baffles. The front baffles, there are two of them, are conical, as you can see. And they feature, you can see it there, stepped ports in the borehole. So that gives you a little bit of extra suppression. They snap together just like so, and they, as I mentioned, shield the outer portion of the front module from debris. And I'll take them apart, put them there. The next portion of the suppressor is the main tube, and the main tube comes apart at the booster assembly, as you might expect. This allows you to mount a 3-lug or a fixed barrel adapter onto the suppressor right there. So that right there will accept a variety of mounts, and as I mentioned, the cool thing about the Lunar-45 is that it uses the same mount as the black side 45 and the GM-45. So if you've already got a few of those, great, you're ready to rock. The other thing it uses is the same pistons. And you can see this piston is filthy, but it should look fairly familiar for those of you who own other Gemtech 45 caliber suppressors. So that's a nice touch. I mean, if you're already... a piston is a fairly simple device. If it isn't broke, don't try and fix it. And Gemtech's been using these for quite a while now. Then obviously you've got your spring and the retaining cap for the assembly. I'm going to go ahead and set those out of the way over here. Now, the final thing we're going to do here is we're going to dump these baffles. So we're going to invert the can, push them out through the front. Now I've got the aluminum tube here. And the interesting thing about the main baffles is that while they do click together just like the front module, they're actually K-style baffles with a forward-facing skirt that engages the baffle in front of the neck. So taking them apart here, you can see I'm going to end up dumping a lot of debris all over my paper here. Just a couple wiggles and they'll open right on up. And then, just like at the front of the can, you've got this short baffle here, which is kind of more of a pure K baffle that we've all grown used to seeing. See if you notice the front of the can has a short conical baffle. I'm going to slide everything up here so that you can better see it. So, as you can see, it's an interesting design because typically with these, with really any suppressor, but especially, you know, really any, not just pistol suppressors, you've got consistent stacks normally. So you normally have a baffle stack that is the same type of baffle throughout. Here on the Lunar-45, you actually get what is effectively partially a K baffle design, and then partially a conical baffle. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not quite sure why Gemtech decided to do that. I can only imagine that probably the conical baffles make more sense at the front of the suppressor because they are a little bit less complicated, less material on the conical baffles, and so I'm guessing that one, keep the weight lower at the front of the suppressor, and two, while cones are usually not the best performers from a back pressure standpoint, they're at the front of the suppressor, so not a big deal. In terms of total number of baffles, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 total baffles, that's about standard. Not that it really matters. I think baffle count is probably an overrated statistic, but there you have it. Putting the suppressor back together is really just the opposite of what we just did. So we're going to take this first baffle here, we're going to drop it down into the next baffle, click it in place, then take that whole unit, drop it on the next one, so on and so forth until we've assembled the suppressor again. And they do, well, I guess at the beginning I said that they click in place, and I don't think it's actually a fair statement. There is some wobble. They are looser now that I've broken them apart. So they don't exactly click into place, but they are timed such that you can use these. There are basically little tabs on the side of each baffle so that you can line them up, and that's important because that'll allow you to line up the baffle ports, and you always want those lined up. I've talked to a number of different folks in the industry asking, do you want them lined up, do you not want them lined up? The answer is almost universally, line up your baffle ports when you're reassembling the stack. Then once we've got this little tower built, we're just going to drop the body of the can over the baffles, press them through here, and then got to be careful because I don't want to drop them out the front, but we're going to drop our piston in, then the spring and the retainer here, give it a little bit of force to compress that spring and screw it on, and then boom. Now if we were going to use the Lunar in its shortened configuration, we would then just attach the front cap and, you know, be ready to go. But we're reassembling the whole thing here, so I'm going to unscrew the front cap, drop these final two baffles into the front module, with the, obviously with the cone facing the threads here. And you can see this portion is actually kind of difficult. Just the way these are machined here with this lip around the cone makes it a little bit tough to kind of squeeze in there because it wants to catch on the threads a little bit, but once you get it in, it'll slide. We've got it in there now. Going to replace the front cap. And then I'm going to drop the whole thing on the front and twist it right on down. And there you have it. The Lunar-45 reassembled. Then, if we're ready to head to the range, and we are, we're just going to take the suppressor with this included .578 by 28 piston and attach it to our Glock 21, and we're ready to rock. So there you have it. We're going to roll on to the range footage now, and then we'll come back for final thoughts. Alright guys, so I know it's a little bit difficult to see or to hear how well really any suppressor performs on a video like this and on YouTube. But I hope you guys got a feel for just how nice the Lunar-45 sounds in the full length configuration, especially. I really enjoyed shooting it this way. In the longer config, it really is right up there with the top performers in this category. I certainly feel like it goes toe to toe with things like the Obsidian 45 and with AAC's Tyrant 45M. So it's right up there with some of the top performers in the category in the longer config. On a 45 pistol suppressor, I'm not a huge fan of the shortened configurations, especially when I'm using them on a 45 host. I've just found that it's really tough from the get-go to suppress a 45 round. I mean, it's a big bullet coming out of the barrel, and that means you've got to have a pretty large bore in the suppressor as well. Allows a lot of gas to escape, so on and so forth. So I found that the shortened configuration, really just about every one of these 45 adjustable length suppressors, it's kind of meh. I mean, it's great. It's great to have from a maneuverability standpoint. Cutting off 1.5 inches of this, the suppressor length makes an even larger difference than you would think in terms of handling. I do wish that Gemtech could have maybe given us a 2-inch front module, and then that would have allowed for an even shorter configuration option. I think that when you're already talking about something that gives you a little bit of ear ringing by itself, going a little bit shorter wouldn't have hurt there. But these options are right there with some of the competition, so nothing to be concerned about there. The other thing that's worth mentioning, I know you probably saw this in the video, was that I was having a little bit of trouble getting the slide to return the battery while using the suppressor. That's not necessarily the fault of the Lunar-45. In fact, that's probably because the recoil spring in this Glock 21 SF is just old. I mean, this was a police trade-in handgun, and while I know it's in great shape overall, but I'm guessing that it's been fired a little bit more than some of the trade-ins you see out there. Not to mention that using this Lone Wolf barrel, it's a little bit tighter lockup than even like the stock Glock one. So I think there are a number of factors there that are mainly on the pistol, and definitely I wouldn't worry about the can itself. So what's pricing like for the Lunar-45? Right now you can find them for a hair over $700 on silencershop.com. That's going to depend a little bit on your local powered by dealer's pricing and what he's decided to set. So you'll see a little bit of variance there, but I've seen them for as low as around 700, maybe 715 bucks. So it's right there with other high-end or flagship style 45 suppressors, but it definitely isn't cheap either. Fortunately, you don't really have to worry about the availability of mounts or pistons, or is Gemtech going to make a 3-lug? Because that's always the question with some of these things. They already do. And so if you're looking to mount the Lunar-45 to the whole gamut of different hosts, it's already there. Everything, all the adapters and everything you need are already there. So you don't have to worry about that support coming in the future, which is nice. I know that some of us buy pistol cans and we're hoping, well, they make a 3-lug so we can put it on our MP5. Sometimes it takes years for that to come. So it's nice that Gemtech already has that out there. Overall, I would say that the Lunar-45 is definitely worth your consideration if you're looking for a 45 caliber suppressor. And I hope this video helped. As always, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more of this type of content. And be sure to click the link in the description to see the full written review. There you'll get more details about the Lunar, things that I maybe forgot here or just didn't work in this format. And you'll also see high resolution photos of the suppressor, which you may find helpful. Thanks for watching, guys.